Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin into the video. We're going to be discussing DirectX 12 on the Xbox One. Now, this is more of a viewer response, since in my previous video where I was discussing the performance benefits of DX12 on Intel's hardware, quite a few people commented and asked, hey, well, what is this going to bring to the Xbox One? Now, I've done an article for this as well, and I'd recommend you check it out. Not only does it have links to Intel sources, it's got quite a few images which show off their demo, but also it's got a lot of research which shows Microsoft's involvement of DirectX 12 and some of the key feature sets inside the Xbox One, and a few other key research points that I'm going to be discussing throughout this video. And I don't want to keep going over old ground for those of you who know this stuff, so if you don't know it, or you need a refresher, or you need more information or a primer, this article will do you proud, because I've covered a lot of information on DirectX 12 already, so you can consider this article to be fairly short, but it's a compendium. It's got a hell of a lot of links in it. So anyway, on with the show. So firstly, if we take a look at the GPU which Intel were using inside of this demo, it was the HD 4400, as I mentioned. It's significantly slower than even a mid-range GPU on a PC, a lot slower. It's actually very low performance GPU, and it's even slower than, say, an Nvidia 730, which, just to give you a point of comparison, is very, very low performance indeed. So the GPU they're using here is almost like a worst case scenario, and significantly inferior to that of the Xbox One's GPU, which isn't actually that bad. I mean, it's kind of like a low to mid-range PC GPU in terms of raw T-flop performance. The CPU is also fairly middling for a PC. It's not the highest level of performance, either in terms of clock speed or core count or hyperthreading or cache, but it's not too bad either. It has a relatively high IPC instruction per clock value, almost something a bit different there, and so it's not too bad. It's not really what I'd consider to be the same as the Xbox One's CPU for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it lacks technically it lacks 4 cores, or should I say 4 threads, but the Xbox One actually allocates 2 of the 8 cores to OS functions, so there's only 6 available for games, so technically it's lacking 2 threads. So hardware-wise, the two systems are very different, but that's not really the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is that I imagine many of you are asking, well, okay, this was actually a Surface Pro 3 tablet they were using, and it was getting like 19 frames a second on DX11, all the way to 33 FPS on DX12. They basically just flicked a switch, and there's also a large power improvement in terms of the actual amount of energy being used, not the performance. We're actually referring to the heat generated and the power consumed as electricity from the mains. While this is true, there are a couple of very key performance and software differences. Firstly, the Xbox One's API is already fairly low level. Microsoft have actually commented this themselves, and there's a link to this in the article if you need it, but during their Developer Days conferences, they specifically stated that there are basically extensions for the Xbox One's DX11 API, which allows you to go very low level. So this is not like a high level API, which we kind of knew anyway. I mean, even when the Xbox One was first announced to be DX11, I was like, yeah, there's obviously something different here. It's not just pure DX11, because that would just make no sense given the CPU and the way that they've actually put the games together. It just wouldn't make sense, as the Xbox One would just keep getting stomped hard by the PS4 in raw CPU performance if it wasn't low level. So that just didn't make sense to me. So I think most of us assumed there were already some low level extensions in there. Second point, the DX11 on the Xbox One does have DX12 features. It's not full DX12. I want to clarify, it's not a full DX12 feature set. It has some DX12 features. Microsoft haven't unveiled all of them, and most likely when full DX12 is released, it's going to be very different. They're going to probably unlock more features on the Xbox One. There are another point as well. We're not quite sure what features of DX12 are going to be compatible with the current crop of GCN cards. Let's call them GCN 1.0, which would be like the Radeon HD 7000 series, which is pretty much what the Xbox One's GPU is. It's kind of a subset of that, but it is using the GCN architecture. So we're not really sure which features are going to be there. Neither Microsoft nor Nvidia nor AMD are commenting what features are going to be available on current graphics cards and which features are not. And to make matters even more convoluted and complicated, there are features on DX12 which have not been announced yet. They are working on them, and it's super duper hush hush. And I've tried to get comments from all three companies, and just like every other website out there, they're just telling you, yeah, you're just going to have to kind of wait for us to unveil things. I don't know if that's necessarily so gamers and others can't get expectations. I imagine for the perspective of AMD, they probably know most of this stuff anyway, because obviously they need to know what Microsoft are going to be doing for their for their API, so that their GPUs are going to be compatible with it. The Nvidia, AMD and Intel all know what Microsoft are doing and planning, so that they can all kind of make sure that everything's compatible driver-wise. Now, I have heard some people that have stated things such as, well, the Xbox One's ESRAM is going to be a big problem. The Xbox One's lack of GPU performance is going to... You know what? None of that is going to be a factor here, really. It's not going to be more of a factor than what it currently is, and in fact, DX12 is probably going to help some because of the lower level of CPU utilization and the fact it's more efficient. The big thing is it's just already fairly low level on the Xbox One, but that's not to say that you can't get improvements. There are driver revisions always being released for both Nvidia and AMD cards. There are system updates for consoles, and all of these things do improve performance. It's not necessarily a massive performance boost. Phil Spencer, once again there's a link to this in the article, has already stated that it's not going to make what he considers to be a massive difference. But massive difference and improvement and performance boost and all of these terms aren't relative to a number. In other words, if I tell you there's going to be a performance boost without giving you a number, what is a performance boost? That's where it gets really dicey and people don't really give honest answers. And if you ask a lot of developers, and this is the problem with a lot of websites that I'm seeing, and you can probably guess which ones I'm referring to, they'll always get little tiny quotes from developers, especially indie developers, on, hey, was the ESRAM a problem, or was, you know, the PS4's GPU really powerful, or will DirectX 12 on the PC make a difference? And a lot of the time they're just going to lead with the title, it's a performance boost, but there's no number there. It's one of the reasons that we're trying to kind of veer away from that, and we're actually missing and not reporting on quite a lot of stories recently simply because of that, despite the fact it can be easy views, because we kind of listen to you guys' feedback, and not to mention the fact it's kind of boring as well. So the problem is, no one's willing to give a performance boost, as in a pure number. My gut feeling, however, from looking at the data, from crunching it, I'm not going to give you a number because it would be a pure guess, and I'm not willing to give you a pure guess, not because I don't want to look wrong, but because I don't think it's unfair to you, because I have nothing to base these numbers on. But I do feel there will be an improvement. I don't think it's going to double the frame rate for the Xbox One, but I do feel that it's going to be a boost. The other point, and this is actually just as critical and crucial, is it will make porting from the PC and to the PC easier. It's going to be a lot better infrastructure, and from what I'm hearing, DirectX 12 is considerably easier to create on, and Mantle as well from what I've heard, but especially DirectX. Because there's always that familiarity there, and for those who don't need the low-level performance, they just need the higher-level API, those extensions are still going to be there, so for all intents and purposes, if they just need to use the DX11 feature set, they can do just that. The final point is that there's likely not going to be a real winner here. As in, those who are saying that there's going to be a huge performance boost, and it's going to unlock. I mean, I've actually seen some people claiming that DirectX 12 is going to unlock once it's announced and unleashed fully. It's going to unlock an integrated GPU inside the Xbox One, and that's going to make this system gain another like 5 T-flops of computing power because it's all under wraps. And I've also heard the reverse. I've heard that it's all hyperbole, it's all marketing, it's all PR, and there's going to be no difference to the Xbox One. Personally, I think both of those are wrong. I believe that there will be a performance boost to the machine, but it's at the end of the day, the machine does have a finite amount of GPU performance. It's 1.32 T-flops, and the PS4 simply has an advantage in terms of raw compute capabilities. That's just what they were when they were built. That's not to say that the Xbox One's GPU couldn't beat the PS4 if the PS4's API sucked. Unfortunately for Microsoft, unfortunately I guess for Sony, that's not the case. The PS4's API was actually built to be fairly robust. But what you can do as an Xbox One owner is take solace in the fact that Microsoft's tools no longer suck balls, which they did do before the system was launched. Microsoft have worked really hard, and I've got to say that I'm actually fairly impressed with the work they've done, not just on the Xbox One, but on the X12 as a whole. So, my final thoughts on this, just to wrap it up, and as a conclusion, we will be seeing a performance boost on the X12 for the Xbox One. How much remains a mystery. In the end, however, it's probably not going to be a 50% boost. It would be surprising to me if it's going to be like a 20% boost. But you know what? Even if it was a 25% boost or a 40% boost, we as gamers are probably not going to be told about it, and that's the key thing. It's most likely you might hear the odd reference here or there, but the problem is, even if you get told that DirectX 12 full release allows 4 times the amount of draw calls for the Xbox One, or 100 times more draw calls for the Xbox One, it doesn't really tell you, in relation to everything else, what the limit is. For example, yes, the CPU and the API now could, and this is once again just a pure thought exercise, could allow it to do another 100 times more draw calls, but the GPU simply might not be able to process all of those, or it might not have the memory bandwidth, or there might be another constraining factor. So there's all of those different things to think of. So it's like the whole PlayStation surface tiling and detiling thing that was mentioned by the ICE team back a couple of months ago. Well, they said it was going to be between 10 to 100 times faster with surface tiling and detiling. But because we don't know the limitations of the engines they're using, the rest of the APIs, what type of benefits that's actually going to have on the system as a whole, because we simply don't know enough about the API, and I suspect, for the most part, most developers probably don't, especially indie developers who are not going to be really tapping into those features anyway, at least on a super duper low level. It's very difficult to get an actual number. But as I said, I do believe the Xbox One is going to benefit from DirectX 12, and that's about all she wrote. Anyway, guys, this has actually been a lot longer than what I originally anticipated, mostly because I wanted to be a little bit rambly and just give you all of my thoughts on this, as in, like, all the possibilities, rather than just hard facts. I wanted to actually kind of go into a bit of thought exercise, just so that you know how complicated this as a subject really is, and it's not really a black and white numbers thing oftentimes. But anyway, hopefully you found it somewhat informative. Anyway, normal stuff applies. If you can give a thumbs up, or a comment, or a share, or whatever, that would be mighty appreciated. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.